I'm gonna. All right. So I am here with Matthew K. Matt, it is so great to see you. I always love talking with you. And I've already given people a bit of an introduction in like your author page, and I talked about you a lot this week in our summer camp. We're focusing on community, and my whole first mini webinar module was really based around the things that I've learned from you when it comes to community, along with a few other folks, but it was mostly based on you because you sort of are like, you know, my North Star, my Southern Cross for all things community. I feel like whenever I'm getting ready for community, I'm thinking, well, what would Matt K do in this situation? And that helps to guide me. But so I've given they have a little bit of introduction of you, and I bet a lot of them already know who you are, but would you mind just kind of like just briefly introducing yourself and kind of what you're up to right now?
Yeah, sure. I'm Matt K. I teach 9th and 10th graders in Philadelphia at Science Leadership Academy. I just finished my 17th year teaching there, and I'm the last founding member of staff level. I wrote Not Light But Fire back in 2018. I wrote with Matt Johnson and Dave Stewart. That came out this year or last year?
I think it came out last May, so it's about a year old.
About a year old. The 5 things. What's the full title? 5 things.
Answers to your biggest questions.
Answers to your biggest questions. Yeah,
it's a long. It's not. It wasn't our choice of the title. It was in a series.
Yeah.
But it was 5 things, right? Yeah.
It was 5. In my brain, it's the 5 things book.
Yeah.
that's how I say it. And then we're gonna keep on talking, which is an elementary version of that.
Yeah, so. Which I'm so excited about. It just came out like this month, right? Yeah, that's awesome. That's very, very cool. All right, so we'll dive right in here because I bet folks have some questions that they want to ask you too, and I want to get to those. But I had a few to start off with. So I told you in the mini webinar that I did, our first one, I referenced a lot of things I've learned from you. And the big 3, we talked about Minefield, your opening day exercise, or at least for me, it became I don't know if you do it on your very first day. I did it my first day, and it was awesome. And we actually did it on our last day to like wrap up the year and talk about it, which was like super fun. So there's that. Your notion that people in the first week tend to be pretty good about community, but it tends to drift off in this idea of systems, like having good news on Monday, right? High grade compliments on Friday, that kind of thing. And then there's also the idea of not assuming that students know how to interact, or not assuming that students know why it's valuable that they have like a cookie contest. So I wanted you to kind of add, to fill in the gaps. What things am I missing on that? In terms of building community, what are some of the most important things? And you can also elaborate on those things, because I think that your elaboration will be much better than mine. But like, what are the things that really matter? What am I missing? What else would you add to that?
I don't think anything's missing. I think that the idea of systematizing the things that we normally shoot from the hip about, I think is important. Like you said, like every Monday we do this, so you can depend on it. Like every Thursday we do this, you can depend on it. Like I think those kind of patterns keep us, they keep us humble. They keep us honest. Because sometimes, like I know, like don't mess with Monday morning. Like on Monday morning we don't do good news. Don't mess with it. Like even if I want to talk about something else, I want to do something else. I know the kids are gonna give me a hard time if I do something besides good news as opposed to. They always think I'm mad at them. Anytime I don't do it, they're like, "Are you mad at us? What happened?" And they get used to that. So I like it. Honestly, it keeps me honest. Like, because I just want to nerd out about the material, and those systems make me check in on the kids, even when they wouldn't be my first instinct. So I think of the things you said, I think that is the biggest one for me. And also that means that, like, to be honest with y'all, like when I was 22, 23, a lot of those, that relationship building is easy because you listen to the same music as them, you do the same, like, you know what I mean? Like, but, mid-30s and I go into my 40s, you know, at 40 years old, I don't have a natural connection to these children. And 14-year-olds. And so if I'm not super intentional about like making those connections, they're not going to get made. And so I think having routines around the kind of touchy-feely stuff that we tend to not have routines about, I think is important.
Nice. And the other thing, so something I didn't really talk about so much with you that I think is really amazing about what you do is that you get kids discussing in a way that's just like I'm not sure I know of anybody else who gets them talking the way that you get them talking. And so having the it's right there in the title of your new book, like we're going to keep on talking, like you get them talking. And I think for a lot of teachers, getting them talking is really hard. So what are your tips about like really getting people talking, really getting kids in a place where like it's not just the same 5 kids jumping into a discussion, they are all like you're getting 50, 60, 70% of the kids jumping in, if not more. So what, how do you do that, and like what are your thoughts on that?
I think, you know, it that's hard. I think first just acknowledging that that's hard. Like I'm always telling student teachers, I'm like, to use kids from last year, I'm like, it's easy to get so-and-so involved in the conversation, but if Ashley ain't talking, your conversation is not popping because Ashley got to be talking. You know what I mean? Like there's those middle third kids that you have targets in your head, or like, do I have them? I mean, that's one early thing I need to think to not. So I think anecdotal information can be really misleading for us. Like if we get those same 3-4 kids talking, we think we're doing something, and then you know it's we can get laser focused. Similarly, like if we have some kids who eat lunch in our room, we can swear that every kid thinks we're safe in our classroom safe, and it's really just those 4 kids. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So first, I try to like target like literally like who are these kids I have to get talking, right? The second thing is varying what the conversations look like. I think one of the biggest things is because we do so much air talk and pod conversations, like the small groups, that like there's kids get in a position to talk under different circumstances. So like talking in whole class is really performative, and some kids are not performative.
Yeah.
Like that, or initially. And so when they get in a small group, if that's again regular and consistent, like twice a week we have pod conversations. Right? If they grow to expect I'm going to get a chance to talk, even if I don't talk in whole class, I've noticed kids will carry over some of those habits from small into large. But even if they don't, they're still talking. Like that counts. Like so, I think you know that's a good way to start on the challenge of getting everybody. If you have to change what the conversation looks like or modify and what conversation looks like in your classes between pair and small group and whole class.
Nice. In your pods, I follow up on this because this is something I'm always thinking about, like organization of them. Like how big are the pods? How often do you break them? Like have new pods? Do they get to choose their own pods, or is this something randomly assigned by you, or do you have like a thought to how you're putting them together?
I'm not dogmatic about it. Like I think use whatever works for you in your classroom. For me, I have them randomized every quarter.
Yeah.
The only times I've not done that is when they're choosing around the thing. Like if we're reading, for example, if we're reading like epistolary novels and it's like choose your own. I'm tired. I can't think of what it's called. Like independent reading, like they choose their own.
Yeah.
I might group the 4 or 5 kids who chose. We want to, you know, we need to talk about Kevin as their epistolary novel, and the ones who choose Gone Girl, they get in different groups. So it's like book groups. So
yeah.
Sometimes the unit will add an element of choice into it that wouldn't ordinarily be there. But other than that, it's random. And then less random as the year goes on. Because, you know, if 2 kids are always fighting, you don't want to put them in the same.
Yeah.
Like, you don't. So, or like, you try to do the things that we all do, like try to make sure we don't put all of our talkative kids and all of our quiet kids and you know, stuff every teacher does. But I don't have too many opportunities for them to choose their own group. I think choosing your own gets more in the turn and talk because I don't assign seats in my class.
Yeah.
Unless the kids are being nice, and like I don't assign seats in my class. So turn and talk means they're naturally talking to a friend because they're sitting with their friend. So
Okay.
that's where they get that energy from. But again, I'm not dogmatic about it. Sometimes you got to assign seats. Sometimes you got to,
Yeah.
it's just.
So so you're saying that they generally are sitting together, with like somebody they choose, but then you have these groups which are separate. It's kind of like get into your group, your pods, and then they move to the pods. I
don't sit kids in groups like naturally in my class.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Again, just for me, I don't like sitting kids in groups. I like sitting them. It's like a you thing going on in my class where they're all facing each other.
Yeah.
But I think sitting in groups is a little overrated on my own perspective.
Yeah, but then you have the groups at some point, right? So you kind of get the best of both, maybe.
Yeah, they get up and move. They get up. My problem is that I haven't really been able to. There may be better teachers than me on here. It's like, to me, I started having classroom management problems. I ain't had when they started sitting in groups. They start sitting in groups. They start talking, and then I feel kind of weird telling them not to talk because they're sitting there facing somebody. It's kind of weird that they don't talk. Like,
yeah,
of course you're going to talk sitting across. Like, I feel kind of weird telling you not to talk when you're like 2 feet from someone else's face. That feels weird.
Yeah.
So maybe people have figured it out. I haven't figured it out.
Yeah. Nice. I love that. All right, I got one more for you, and then I think I want to get some questions from the other folks. My last one was just like, of all the community building things you do, what are the like 2 or 3 that, like, if you went to a desert island and you can only use these 2 or 3, like that's it, everything else has to go away? Like, what are the 2 or 3 things that like are just you're like, this is the centerpiece of my community building. I gotta have this, is critical, and those home runs that you have for it, or at least triples. No.
Good news, definitely. I think I would have to bring good news anywhere I go. I think good news would probably be my biggest one. Just an opportunity for kids to share about their lives in a non-academic way, which kind of like our elementary school colleagues like are really good at this. This is something in high school, oftentimes it's used, it goes away. Opportunities for kids to like show and tell, like high schoolers need show and tell, like high schoolers need, like all these kind of things that like our elementary colleagues get so good at, like our kids didn't stop needing that because they got older. Like nap time, like kids need nap time when they're 16.
They do.
So I think
it's called fifth period at my school, right after lunch. That's,
right? Oh man, teaching that after lunch class is crazy. That's right. So I think giving the kids opportunities to speak in a structured way about things that are not academic, I think is important.
Nice. All right, well, folks out there, we got a small but mighty crew here. What questions do you have? You have like who I consider to be just like the ultimate community like Jedi master here, in Matt K. So any questions from your own classes, community building questions, or just questions generally, because I mean, Matt, I'm sorry, I don't want to embarrass you here, but like you're just amazing at everything, like student publishing, you just do incredible stuff with, and the writing prompts that you get them working. This is your chance, people, to ask about any of that stuff. So you can just throw it in the chat, or you can just jump in. Oh, here we go. So I find it sometimes a challenge to get students out of their comfort zone. Tips for doing that, from Michelle here.
And in the comfort zone, how? What do you mean? Like what? Like kids who are shy talking, or kids who talk about something they're not like? What do you mean?
So kids who are shy and who want to just kind of like stay, stay on their own and in their own kind of little group, or just kind of on, by themselves. Yeah, like so. And you did mention this. You mentioned the idea of like finding kids who like are kids who are like focus kids. So actually, I'd like to hear more about that too. So
Yeah, I mean, so, and thanks for the question. I think there's a couple ways. I don't have like a system, but there's a couple ways. Like I got this kid who I just finished teaching her second year, and never talked in class, never. Super quiet, very soft voice child, English language learner, um, just like, but like super good writer and stuff. It's not language; it's just like I want to speak. Um, but that's part of the reason why pods and turn and talks are so important, because she gets a chance to talk. And otherwise, if I didn't have those things, she wouldn't get a chance to talk. But besides that, I think trying to find ways to talk to this child outside of academic, like being super intentional about when I see her walk into the class, like, "Hey, Wendy, how you doing?" When she leaves, "Hey, all right, Wendy, have a good day." It's making sure she feels seen in class. That's really intentional. My student teacher saw me, and I was like, and it's a balance because you don't want to make a kid feel weird, like, which means you have to be greeting lots of kids. You can't just be her. But I think like having the moment to be like, I don't mind if she feels like I have special attention on her, because she knows she don't talk. Like she's not surprised if she don't talk. But for her to see, hey, I'm making a clear effort to talk to you, even though you don't talk in class. I think it's important, and I can tell it worked. I feel one of my proudest moments. Like I'm getting tired of doing the poetry thing. I've been doing it for so long. It's extra hours. I got 2 kids. I'm tired, right? And in Godfather, where they're like, they keep pulling me back in. That's how I feel because Wendy joined poetry. I don't even know what that kid's voice sound like. She sent me an email saying, "I think I want to join poetry club." It's spoken word poetry, like this up there through a microphone. She's like, "I think I want to join." She went every Tuesday this spring. And it's like, I attribute that, I could be wrong, but I attribute that to like, she just kind of floats through school. And I just try to make it feel like she's got a little bit, right, Michelle? Like
yeah.
I was feeling myself. I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling myself. I'm like, yes, but just because like you definitely feel seen by me. And my goal is not that you talk in class. My goal is that you feel seen. I think those are different. Like my goal is that you have avenues to express yourself. And so through writing, through small groups, through one-on-one, through now I guess poetry, you have a means to express yourself. That's why I don't have like discussion points in class. Like I don't give discussion point. Like no one gets extra credit for. No one. It's not a measured thing. Like for how often you raise your hands, because a kid like Wendy would get a low grade, and I'm like, I don't know what she's been through. I don't know why she taught. Like I don't know her like that to be giving her a lower grade in English because she don't talk voluntarily. That feels weird to me. But I can talk about listening, and she's a good listener. She cites her classmates in her essays and stuff like that, so she gets high points on listening. And so, I just don't want to make kids feel awkward for them talking or bad for them talking, but also just know, hey, I'm interested. But yeah, I'm not. Yeah, Michelle, I'm really not with the discussion points. Like, I have like pedagogical issues with discussion point. Like, I don't think someone's a bad person. I just think I have issues with grading discussion based on how often kids put their hand up. Because then a kid like Wendy or the Lotus, or you wrote about in the book, like you just gave them a reason to not take risks in your class. You gave them a reason to not feel welcome in your class.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. I also have some pedagogical issues with that. But let's move on. We got a great one here, which is kind of an opposite sort of question. It's how do you deal with a class that has a good rapport and community, but a student or two who is clearly like a clear outlier, someone who's not cooperative. And it says how do you work? So this is like somebody who it says ornery, know it all, hogs the conversations, super shy or quiet. Maybe we spoke to just a little bit here, but we can kind of keep going on that. And how do you work with that student and at the same time get the rest of the class to show kindness, grace, and patience? So there's a couple of really, I think, important things wrapped up in there. That outlier student, sometimes very, somebody who's kind of disrupting it or who's kind of trying to hog all the conversations, and also kind of getting your class, in a place where they can show them kindness and grace and patience too. That's tricky. What do you do there?
I had that this year. I had that this year. And I get it at SLA a lot because your magnet school kids come from all over the city. A lot of times the kids were like really the truth at their middle school. Then they get here and they're like, oh my gosh, like this is different. But I had some extreme versions of it this year. I had some kids who was like definitely brought some like they were scared. They're terrified to be in the class with all smart kids. Like they're terrified. Like, for those who are listening, there's air quotes around smart kids. But this kid and her language, she was like all sorts of acting out. Like she was fighting first day of school. She was cussing me out the first day of school. Like this on some regular. And I'm like, it was clearly, I've been teaching long enough to know that this kid was just terrified. Absolutely terrified. They're like, I don't have fit. These kids are working in a way that I'm not going to like. And I think one of my biggest things was the same kind of treatment that I would give to Wendy that I just described, like with some of the rookie mistakes that I would have made in the past. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we take a kid like that. I'm taking the ornery, know-it-all, hog the conversation extreme from the check. Like with that kid, like sometimes our instinct is like pull them aside and say, "Hey, you could be a leader." And that's like the biggest rookie mistake. Like any bad teacher knows that that's not it at all. Like that's not the move. You tell them they're gonna be a leader, all of a sudden, that's very rarely does that help as an initial point. Like a lot of times it's pulling them aside and just talking to them honestly about, hey, look, what's up? I guess you doing all this yelling and cussing in class. What's going on? Like, why you do? Like having a conversation that's not getting them in trouble, like because they're probably used to that. Like they've been doing that for a while. They're probably used to that. And I would say early, I remember with this kid this year, like she had some patterns. And I was like, well, every time we ask on writing, you act, go to the bathroom and you don't come back. Like I see you, like, and you see me, say, yeah. And then she ended up saying, like, I leave class because I know you're gonna come over and try to help me, and I don't want to disappoint you. And like I was talking to her, and I'm like, well, why you're not going? I said the things that teachers would say, and like I don't know, like y'all don't agree. But I think relentless one-on-one attention, that is kind. Like I'm pulling you aside. I noticed this behavior. What's going on? Not I noticed this behavior like you're bad or whatever, or like you have to change it. I'm like, what's going on? Why you do all that? Why'd you do that? I think when it's one kid, just like with Wendy, they often know that they're that kid. Like sometimes we assume that they don't know, like we speak around the issue. And I've had success being like, hey, you notice, right, that you're the only one doing this. Like, I'm not even mad at you, but why you doing this? like, why you do that? Or why'd you say that? That wasn't very nice. Like, why you say that? Like, they didn't deserve that. But having the time to have those conversations, I think, is important. And the second part, I like that, to get the class to show kindness and grace.
Yeah.
That's tough though. And I think that like there's an easy answer there where just like, again, talk about kindness and grace and moderate, which I think I don't want to throw away because it's important. Like I've had multiple special needs kids, for instance. When I read this, I think about special needs kids, right? And the kids like shouting out and class, stuff like that, because they're on the spectrum, because they're any of the issues that would cause them to be disrupted in social ways in class. Like the kids will often pick up how you handle it. Right, a couple of kids last year where I had to like check myself to make sure I didn't show frustration. I didn't, so that the kids didn't see me and feel like I had lost control of the situation. That's when they feel like teasing the kid. That's when they feel like, I feel like but I think making sure that I speak to the kid the way they want other kids to speak to the kid. Even when it comes to holding them accountable. Like I had a kid who was like constantly interrupting his classmates. He has special needs, constantly interrupting. And I'm like, but it was on his IP and stuff. And I'm thinking like, yeah, we're not going to do all that. Like, we're not going to do all that interrupting. Like, that's not going to be a thing. We were going to focus on it. And he got better over the course of the year in the class, because it was kind of like I set the standard. Like, it's okay to say don't interrupt me. That's okay. But don't be a jerk about it. You know what I mean? There's a difference between saying I was still speaking, please don't interrupt me, because they heard me speak to the kid that way. They said he was still speaking, please don't interrupt. So you saw the kids using my language. The kids started using my language and addressing the kids. And I think that's the biggest thing. But that's hard. I'm not going, that's hard. Especially it's hard when like you want the kids to protect themselves too. Like if the kid's being mean, I don't want to make the other kids be his friend. Like, how's that my job? Like, that's something I was just talking about that somewhere else. Like sometimes like a kid's not a safe person to be around because they're mean. And sometimes in my role as an advisor, sometimes, they come up to, I don't have no friends. And I'm like, well, stop being mean. Like I'm not gonna make people hang out with you because you're being mean. And so it's tough. I don't want them to I want them to be kind and show grace, but I don't want to make them be friends. Yeah. So that's a tough angle.
But I love your idea of also just like your response, right? That they sort of see how you respond, and then like that sets the whole tone. That reminds me of parenting too. That's all right. Anybody else? I think we got Matt for at least a few more minutes here. I know you got to drive back to Philadelphia here, so we won't hold you too long. But anybody else have anything they want to ask? There we go. Thank you for all your work on community. And then we have, what classroom policies have you noticed impede community building? Yeah, and which are necessary despite student pushback. So maybe there are some that kind of impede it, but you still got to have them. But I like this idea. Which ones impede it? That's great. Pamela, that's awesome.
Ooh. Impede community building. I'll tell you one thing. I'm sure I can think. If I were to think on this, I'd have like 50. But the first thing that comes to mind, like when I talk about good news and stuff like that, right? Which stuff to me seems so obvious and it's such low-hanging fruit, right? Like, but there are teachers teaching in spaces where the admin, if they don't have a do now on the board and they're not doing it like 30 seconds after the kids start, they're gonna get written up.
Yeah.
Or like, and I think that's one of them. And it's like a classroom policy where like we are bell to bell. And we are bell to bell, like with instruction, like flat out instruction. So many schools have that like mandated teaching. You got to be bell to bell. And if you're not bell to bell, then you're gonna get in trouble. And I think, and it'd be the same admins bringing me in to talk to teachers, talking about how can they have better conversations. And I'm like, yo, like how they supposed to have conversations when you don't give them a chance to like get to know the kids? Like if you're penalizing, like you can't have it both ways. Yeah. Like if you want to have teachers do these awesome conversations, you can't have them go. I think Michelle just asked in the chat, how do you convince them that community building is an essential part of instruction? I think that part's a little bit easier because the logic makes sense. Like even before you get data, like it reminds me, by the way, of my wife who does a lot of creative writing in her classroom and a lot of writing, and her test scores are better because the kids write better. Like it leads to better. So like there's data that will prove it. But I think with community building, it's a similar kind of vibe. But even before you get data to back it up, you'll get like the logic is clear because if you are, let's say, discussing, I don't know, I just read the book Evicted, about people losing their houses and getting, you know, and if you're having a conversation about rental policies and that kind of stuff, the conversation, right? You have a kid who's going through something like that. Why would they share that story? Why would they engage authentically in that conversation if you don't know if they won their soccer game? Like, in a very practical level, like a lot of these big conversations require vulnerability and require risk taking. And it's actually unsafe for a kid to engage in risk taking and vulnerability with people who are not like at least family adjacent to them.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, it don't even make sense. Like sometimes we can fuss the kids, how come y'all not talking? Everyone's so quiet. We're talking about these big life and death things. And it's kind of like, you don't know me like that. You're just my English teacher. Like you're asking me to do some stuff. You're asking me to go to a place. You're asking me to confront my privileges. You're asking me to do all that kind of stuff. And you don't even know, you haven't seen a picture of me in my prom dress. Like, why would I do that? Like, we're not family. We don't build on that level. And I think that's something that literally everyone has gone through because everyone has had someone come up to them. Like every single person has had someone come up to them with some type of energy. And you want to look at them and say, yo, bro, you are not my brother. You are not my sister. You are not my cousin. You're not my friend. Like, you need to back up. We're just colleagues. That is a professional feeling that literally everyone has felt. Like somebody's been on somebody has approached them on some type of time that is not, like they've misread the relationship. And that's what we do to kids all of the time. Why don't you share this? Why don't you share this? Why don't you share this? And they're like, you think you're somebody to me that you are not. Like you, and I think once you say it like that, I've had experience, it's like a light bulb. They're like, oh, yeah. Like why would kids engage that kind of stuff? You know, if we don't at least make a little bit of an attempt to get to know them better.
Yeah. All right, we got one here that says, do you have rules around good news, or is it just what they did this weekend? This is something actually I've kind of always wanted to ask you like a little bit, because sometimes with good news, I feel like the same 7 or 8 kids are like, I won my basketball game again. Like, so it says in my town, it's not sometimes an opportunity to brag. How do you get all the kids, or at least a lot of the kids, maybe like maybe Wendy's not ever jumping into good news, or maybe she is. But how do you kind of like handle that, like set that up and then kind of go about that where you feel like it's kind of sharing it in the way you want? Or is it okay that it's yeah?
I don't care about the bragging. I don't care about like, I get some that's like, you know, for every time a kid is saying that they had a good breakfast, it's a kid saying that their mom got their green card, their dad got out of jail, they found their favorite sneakers. You know what I mean? Like it's everything, small things, big things. There's some things I do. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's not good. And the kids finish, they're like, it's great. Like we try to create a little bit of a tiered, but I don't mind. They're like, yo, a lot of times it is something worth bragging about. Like they're like you know, my band did something with a band. Like we had a concert and it was really good. And I think what I like to like, I don't say this like weirdo teacher hero complex stuff. I say it like as a reality thing. Like sometimes it becomes very clear that kids have been looking forward to sharing something good news.
Yeah.
Like I don't know who else in their life they have to share this good news with, but they depend on every Monday being able to share it with them. Like I'm not assuming that they don't. It's just that the kids' behavior sometimes I'm like, they come in, are we doing good news? Like they're excited to share. So I don't really care like about everybody doing it. I found out that most people, like some people will do it more than others, but it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I ain't trying to solve everything. Like if it's the same 10 out of 30, it's the same 10 out of 30. It's not a big problem. That just makes it special when that other kid who never raised their hand. I'm like, ooh, what you got to say? So I don't really stress that too much.
That's always a favorite moment when it's like that kid, and you're like, oh, like it's week 20, and then they go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got a couple more here. I think these might be our last few, but we can try and sneak one or two in. Because I know you got to get back to Philadelphia. I also have to pick up my daughter by 4 from her camp. So, and so it's summertime, right, y'all? We have. Do you use any type of reflection writing in community or in the community, or is it all discussion? So, kind of, how does the writing discussion kind of? How do you do that?
Mine is mostly discussion. We do writing reflection after projects, but not. I don't tend to do much community writing, reflection writing for community building stuff. That's not necessarily how I use reflection writing. The other one, how do I get students to learn how to cite each other?
Yeah, that one's awesome. That one's sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the favorites. That's one of the things I'm most proud of. Like, I'm happy that works. I don't want to overstay. I don't want to make it seem more complex than it is, to be honest. Like, I have 2 ways to hold them accountable for that. Like, the first is that in their notebooks that they have for class, they all have a notebook and they have to write in the notebook just about every day. There's like stuff that they have to put in the notebooks.
Yeah.
But I reserve the A's and the high B's on the notebook I collected every quarter to kids who cite their classmates and have like responses to stuff they heard in the conversation. And the second way is in the analytical projects, the kids informally, because I teach 9th and 10th grade, informally cite like Tanya said in class, and they'll relate to it. So those are the 2 ways to hold them accountable. And outside of accountability, it's just me losing my mind every time they say each other. Like, that's my biggest thing, because they get to learn that I care deeply, and so they try to make me happy. So they're like, "Oh my God, you built off of so and so. That's so good. Say it again. Don't you feel special? She built off of you. You're so smart." Like, I make such a big deal about them citing each other. I have them up on my wall. I have the like citation prompts, like building off a blank said, like, and I point to it when a kid says it. You did this. I clap, and like the kids laugh because they know I'm being silly, but also it's kind of like they get used to this idea of like we have to listen to each other and find different ways for them to
yeah. I mean, it elevates their voices up to the voices of like the text and the teacher, right? It's like I learned that from you. I love it. I for the folks, I can't recommend that enough. Like, that's another one of those just game-changing community things that I learned from you. So,
well, it changes listening from something you do just to be good or to be nice, to be polite, into something that you do because you want to learn, right? It's like, I don't want listening to just be something you do because I don't want to be bad. I want listening to be something you do because so-and-so got something cool to say.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I appreciate any other very last ones here. I think we got another minute or so. Anybody have something you're like, oh my God, I got to ask this before he goes? All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for stopping by summer camp here. I really appreciate it. I know you've had a busy day here. And thank you. This has just been awesome. And so I'm just gonna say right now that like everyone should go by Not Light But Fire, and then we got a new one. We're gonna keep on talking. Did I get that right? I think I mentioned this when I mentioned you, but like Not Light But Fire is still the only pedagogical book I've ever read in one sitting. Like, I was literally sitting there and I just read the whole thing. Like, it was like a novel that I got into. That has never happened before or since. I like teacher books, but like not like that. I just wanted to keep reading it because I was just like every page. So everyone should go buy that right now. Buy like 10 copies and give them to everybody you know. For both of them. Matt, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
No problem. Y'all be good. Have a good one.
All right. Have a safe drive back.
All right.
All right, folks. Well, I think we are all done here. I'm going to stop our